Hey guys, it's Raina, and I am super sick. It's not a good way to bring in the new year. Um, I haven't been making as many videos as I want. I have a whole bunch of content, and I've been trying to get it up and running, but I've been dealing with a few things, and I just thought I would do a little update. And I thought I'd talk about what it's like being a mermaid with chronic illness. I'm sick right now, so I'm going to be coughing through this video. I've had health problems since I was born. I was born 3 months premature, and my parents were told not to get attached to me because I wasn't going to live. And I was about as big as your hand, and they had to dress me in Cabbage Patch Kids dolls clothing because I wouldn't fit in regular clothing. I spent months and months and months in the hospital, and the big issue I faced is that my immune system kind of attacked my lungs. My lungs didn't develop properly, and when I was born, I was drowning in my own lungs, and so they had to use an experimental drug on me at the time so that I could breathe, and they weren't sure it was going to work, but it did work. I had a couple of scary close calls as a kid where, as sort of a side effect result of this drug, I had, I think, 3 attacks where my lungs completely filled up with fluid, and I was drowning in my lungs as a child, and it was really scary. They were worried I might have cystic fibrosis, and I had to be tested for that, and thankfully I didn't, but it was still really scary. It wasn't asthma or anything like that, but it just completely, lungs just filled with fluid. I remember waking my dad up and not being able to breathe and going for all these tests and everything. It was scary. As a kid, because of my weakened immune system from being born premature, I was sick a lot. Like, the way I'm sick right now is pretty much how I spent my childhood. Just constant head colds, ear infections, lung infections. I had ear infections so much that it was damaging my ears so bad. I was constantly on antibiotics, and now as an adult, they don't work for me. And a lot of those things killed my appetite, so I wouldn't eat. So I was really underweight as a kid, and I ended up malnourished and have to go to the hospital and be fed through an IV a couple of times. And just had like very low muscle tone. This entire time I had dyspraxia as well, and we didn't really know it. It wasn't really recognized as a thing back there, but they call kids with dyspraxia nowadays rubber children because they can't really put on any muscle. They're very, even when they're thin, their body's kind of flabby and stretchy and rubbery, and they have a hard time with balance and coordination, and I did. So as I grew older, I got better, thankfully. I got a handle on things. When I was a teenager, I started having very severe chronic leg pain and back pain. And when you're a teenager, they kind of think, well, it's growing pains, suck it up. And I've gotten sick with a few things like mono, like most teenagers do, but the pain never went away. And I can remember just sitting on the couch asking my dad to squeeze my legs because they hurt so bad and I just needed that pressure. Around this time, I also started experiencing endometriosis, but of course we didn't know that's what it was. And endometriosis is a disease where the tissue lining in your uterus, for some reason, is growing in other parts of your body, and they don't know why. In very extreme cases, they found endometriosis in people's brains, and they don't know why this happens. So I basically had this growing throughout my body. I've got some on my sternum, so it affects my breathing. So when I was having the pain, it was like a heart attack. And then I had some on my sciatic nerve, so I was like 20 with sciatic nerve problems. And all through my pelvic muscles and pelvic organs and my digestive tract and all that stuff. And we didn't know this back then. All I knew was I had a lot of pain. And I mean, when you're a girl and you have abdominal pain, people just pretty much are like, take some ibuprofen and suck it up. I also, at that time, started having the symptoms of interstitial cystitis, which again, we didn't know that back then. So these are two diseases that I had for a really long time without any treatment that kept getting worse and worse. And so interstitial cystitis is, so the way that endometriosis is sort of your immune system attacking the endometrial lining, this is your immune system attacking your bladder lining. And my bladder lining was like destroyed, and it just caused a lot of pain, and it caused back pain and hip pain, and that would make me kind of walk funny or sit funny, and we had no idea. And it makes you pee a lot. Like, there's a lot of foods that irritate interstitial cystitis, and if you eat those foods, you have to pee like every 20 minutes. And so we went to doctors and we're like, why does she pee so much? And they were like, stop drinking so much water. So I went with it for years and years and years without knowing. And all of these issues just sort of came to a head in my early 20s because they weren't being addressed. And trying to get them diagnosed was really hard. And I would go to lots of doctors and they would just prescribe me painkillers and birth control. I think I've been on every birth control, and no one screened me for endometriosis, so some of the birth control made it worse. And they just put me on so many painkillers that I actually burnt my esophagus and my stomach. So that's caused me issues as well. And just in the process of trying to figure out what was wrong with me, they discovered I did have scoliosis, which doesn't really affect me much, but because of that curve in my spine and then the pelvic disease is pulling on those muscles, it messes up your hips and legs, so it was definitely contributing to my leg pain. I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue, which when you have an autoimmune disorder, you're going to be tired. And I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which I didn't believe at first. And anyone else who has this diagnosis, please bear with me while I get my little blurb out here. But I was very ignorant, and I felt that they were just slapping that label on me because they didn't know what was wrong with me, and that I would never tell people because I didn't think it was real. And when I read things about fibromyalgia, I didn't really feel like it was describing what I was experiencing. So I sort of like put that in the back of my mind and just didn't pay attention to it until it reared its ugly head a few years later. So what basically got all of this to finally get better is Sean. I would have endometriosis attacks that would get closer and closer and closer together to the point that it was ruining my life. I was going to emergency like 2-3 times a month. I was missing birthdays and Christmases, and one time Sean and I went camping and I got so sick from the pain that I thought I was dying, and his poor niece thought I was dying. I've written about this in my book. And I had to go to a hospital that was French speaking, and they didn't have any rooms left, so they had to put me in a room that was for criminals. So they were like, we turned off the security cameras, and Shawnee had to sleep in the car because there was nowhere for him to sleep, and he slept on my mermaid tail, and he ended up with mermaid scales all over his face. It was really funny. They put me on Dilaudid, which is a really strong painkiller, and even though it kind of made me high, I was still in significant pain. Like, I can't explain how horrific the pain of endometriosis was. I would rather have an arm amputated than go through that pain again. It made me very suicidal because the doctors just didn't seem willing to do anything about it. And this happens for a lot of women. It takes a lot of women like 10 years on average to even get diagnosed. And surgery should be a frontline treatment, and it's not. They make women wait so long and try every other medication before they do surgery, and it ends up making symptoms worse, and then the disease spreads and it affects fertility. So surgery was never ever given to me as an option. In Nova Scotia, the wait times are really, really long. And not only that, at the time, there wasn't anybody who was really skilled at the type of surgery, and so they basically said, like, there's a lot of risk to having permanent damage if you go for the surgery, so we want to try all the other methods first. So the other methods were like, hey, let's put you into medical menopause. I was like, I don't really want to do that. So there was an experimental drug released to the market, and it was called Vyzan, and I decided to try it, and it saved my life. So I didn't have to have surgery or hysterectomy or go into menopause. I take Vyzan. It's only available in Canada and the UK right now. I hope it is available for more people soon. And it totally put the disease into remission for me. So I don't have pain from endometriosis anymore, but I do have the effects of having the disease long term. So I still have scar tissue throughout my body. It's still really hard on my immune system, and it still affects all those organs and muscles and tendons in my pelvic floor. So I had to go to specialized physiotherapy, and I go to chiro and massage, and all of that helps. I even got Botox injections to help because it helps with pain. So yeah, that's been an adventure. The initial cystitis really builds off the endometriosis, and when one flares, the other flares, and that just, it just basically feels like having a bladder infection 24/7. It doesn't hurt me very often anymore, but I do get attacks if I have the wrong foods, if I'm sick, or if I'm really stressed out. I was really stressed out from Romania, and I got an initial cystitis attack, and my stomach bloated out so far, and I couldn't stop peeing, and I couldn't sleep because it hurt so bad, and nothing was working. So that really sucks, but I'm very lucky that I'm able to keep both of these diseases in check, because for a lot of people, by the time they get help, the disease is end stage and nothing works for them except removing the organ. I have people in my life that may have to have their bladders removed because it's such a bad disease. So even though it sucks, I'm glad it's not worse. So the fibromyalgia, I understand it now, and I know that I have it, and it's an immune problem as well, and it causes all over body pain. And for me, my fibro is really linked to my other diseases. So when I get sick like I am right now, that's when I get head to toe pain, and it's awful. It just feels like someone's beating you up all the time. And it makes something as stupid as a head cold feel like the end of the world. So being a mermaid and trying to cope, I just wanted to talk about it honestly, because I feel like we always put this image out there to make ourselves look like these magical creatures, and life is awesome, and it's so easy to be a mermaid, and I throw on the wig and I do the makeup and I have the awesome tail, and then I'm a mermaid, and people are like, oh, you're so lucky, you're so beautiful, I wish I could do that, I have this issue, I have that issue. But it's not that easy. It's taken me 9 years to get to where I am. I've definitely been at gigs where I wanted to throw up or cry because I felt so sick or in pain. I've been through the barrage of trying different medications and having side effects. I took Elavil for a while for my initial cystitis, which made me gain 40 pounds and made me sleep 15 hours a day, made everything taste bad, and made me a zombie. And I tried gabapentin as well, and I tried all these painkillers like arthritic and stuff, and it all sucked. Yeah, and I just want people to know that behind every successful person, we've all got our own demons and our own things that we're trying to overcome. I'm very inspired by Annette Kellerman, who I've spoken about and written about, because she had a lot of the same health issues I have, and she still pushed through to make something of her life. And the way that I see it is, if I took a day off for every day I felt sick, I'd just be in bed for the rest of my life. And I want to live. And sometimes the discomfort of pushing myself is worth it for the experience. It's not without cost though. This summer I injured a nerve in my neck, and it was a leftover issue from a car accident I was in last year where I had a concussion. And that really messed me up for 6 months with my mermaiding, and made me kind of depressed because I couldn't go to the gym, and I put on weight, and I lost my movement and flexibility. So, those things happen. But I just try to take it day by day and set myself obtainable goals. I try to eat healthy and exercise. It's hard sometimes and discouraging sometimes. I try to rest when I can and when I should. I gotta tell you, it has sucked spending Christmas vacation in bed, but at least I have the freedom to do that. And yeah, I'm just gonna keep doing it. I'm gonna be the underdog and keep defying the odds and just keep living. And my problems seem so small when I talk to some other people who have a lot more. But I hope that by following my mermaid journey, a lot of people can feel empowered to face their own weaknesses and demons and illnesses and mental health and everything, because we only get this one life. And instead of focusing on what we can't do, we gotta focus on what we can do, which is something that my personal trainer taught me, because I felt like an idiot doing personal training because I couldn't do anything. When I started, I couldn't do anything, and now I'm like deadlifting and but you know, everything just takes time, and everything worth having is worth fighting for. So that's sort of my little message for you going into the new year. If you're going to make any kind of resolution for yourself, be gentle and kind and caring with yourself, and don't let your weaknesses or your cold or your sickness or your mental health or anything keep you from having the best life you can. Take it one day at a time, ask for help when you need it, and just keep on doing it. Best wishes, and Happy New Year for 2018.